Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host, your friend, your coach of the Leader Lot podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, my new great friend, Mr. Graham Robinson, and recent not only attendee of the 5-day podcast lead challenge in May, but also one of the recent graduates of the Profit Podcast Academy of the month of June 2024. And this morning here, it's 10:10, Friday, July the 5th. I'm having him as one of my guests to share his story, and I'm really honored to have him because he's got a powerful story. That's how we connected. And I'm excited to hear more about your story. So, Graham, brother, welcome to the show.
Hi, Payman. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. So we're going to talk about your business and all that good stuff in a moment. But first, for people who don't know you, tell us, who's Graham as a person, as a man, as a human being?
Well, the truth is a very different person to what I was 5 years ago. So I started writing a book 5 years ago thinking that it was just a simple project and I'd just get my story, because I left home when I was 13 and left school and disappeared into Sydney and I was broke. But what happened was, during the writing of that story, I realized that actually some of the things that I had been, the way I'd acted as an adult, and some of the things I'd been doing and so on, not able to hold down a relationship, getting angry very quickly, all stemmed from some of the abuse I had as a child. And so I started to research that a bit and came across the term inner child and the damaged inner child, and then started to realize that when they talked about that, as I read, I found that some of the impacts were exactly what I was suffering. And I had no idea, I'd never heard those terms before. So I started to find that not only writing the book, but also I needed to get help elsewhere, and started to do that. And the change is dramatic, is amazing between that. So, you know, I've had a career in radio as a broadcaster. When I was younger, I worked as a nightclub DJ in Darwin and on cruise ships. So I've had a fun career. But the interesting thing is, all through my life, whenever I was in large groups, even when I was at the nightclubs, I always felt like I didn't belong, like I was alone, like I couldn't actually connect with anyone there. And I mean, you know, in the way that most people were having fun and laughing and they had friends around, I just couldn't make those connections. So, and that's been something that's been with me most of my life. So this all stems back from some of the things that happened during childhood. So now the book's published, and now, thanks to you and thanks to some of the people on the web page, on the Facebook page, the Academy Facebook page, I'm starting to realize that there's a lot of people who can help you, and there's a lot of people who've gone through some of those things. And so it's great. I'm connecting with some very interesting people, some great people. And it started me now down the path of building some therapies to work with, in particular, men, older men who feel the same way, who feel angry, frustrated, don't know why, they can't hold down relationships. I want to talk to them and try and help them get past that. So that's the next goal.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to talk about all of that in a moment. First, what I'd like to do is ask you a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know you as a person. Ready?
I'm ready. Go.
What makes you happy?
Seeing my children.
How many do you have?
3.
Okay, good. What makes you smile?
My son brought a cat with him. He's living with me at the moment, my son. And I haven't had an animal in 20 years. And just the cat will curl up alongside me and just patting it at night makes me smile.
That's
just
beautiful.
rubbing it gently. Yeah. It's a nice feeling. It's very calming.
Absolutely. What makes you come alive? What sets your soul on fire?
The idea of being able to help people get past what I had to me, the way I felt, to make people feel better and improve their lives. That I don't know if you know much about astrology. I think you do, but there's a north and a south star.
Yep.
And you know, if you follow your North Star. It is about your purpose for being here. And we all have a purpose. It may be simply to raise a good family. It might be to own a dairy farm. It might be to be the best podcaster in the world. But, you know, we have a purpose. And so by doing what I'm doing, now starting to, it feels like the right thing to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. On the other side of the spectrum, what makes you sad and angry?
Racism makes me really angry and sad. The world at the moment makes me pretty sad.
Yeah.
Look around and there are very few people, you know, there's, for example, on your Facebook page, there are all these people trying to help people and they have all these great ideas. And then you look at the leaders around the world and you think of just how awful they are treating the world, and how horrific the world might be going at the moment. It's certainly in a bit of a tailspin. That makes me sad. Closer to home, there's not that much. A lot of the work I've done has got rid of that sadness. I do get upset with people who are rude to other people. But yeah, that's what really worries me the most at the moment, is what's going on in a bigger picture.
You know, you raised a beautiful point. First of all, thank you for the kind words, but also, yes, our world leaders might be doing the thing incorrectly right now, but we're seeing a grassroots movement of people raising each other, helping each other, inspiring each other. And that's what it takes. It's not the government's job to help us or whatever. Sure, they have their job, but each of us, we have to take responsibility, help ourselves, and also help just one person, your neighbor, your friend, or someone across the world. Because my purpose for the podcast has always been since the start, whenever I bring in a guest, like you, for example, currently, if your story can inspire just one person or give them hope or give them an idea, or they can relate to you, oh, I've been there, I can identify with them, I can relate to them, I can reason to them and get them out of the rut or the funk they may be in, that to me is success. And then they go on and inspire, help someone else. We're going to create a ripple effect around the world. We don't need the government,
And
you know?
that is the ripple effect, isn't it? You can't help 10,000 people in one go unless something really happens, but you can help one person, and you never know where that person might get to and how many they will help and so on. And so that is how you've got to start. You've got to think about, I will help them and they will help others. And I do believe that you mentioned grassroots movement, and I think that will happen with people. I think
It is happening. It is happening.
Yeah, some of the decisions that are being made on a bigger stage means that grassroots is growing and will grow, because people will see, well, we don't want this and we're going to surge, and I think that will happen, and the people eventually will be heard. But yeah, and you're right. I mean, I'm starting to realize there's lots of wonderful communities around to join and be part of, who are doing great things, who are there to help.
Absolutely. And look at the number of people who have staggering number of people have quit their jobs, their careers, because they just want to pursue something more meaningful, more purposeful, and they or just simply want to so-called escape the matrix. I'm an example. I didn't want to be part of it anymore. I didn't agree with the way my country, Canada, was being run, or rather ruined. You know, if I see that my vote doesn't make a difference at the urn, I can vote with my wallet, take my business elsewhere. I can vote with my feet, go elsewhere. That's what I've done. So more people are doing that. People are taking control of their lives by building their own business, especially online, and where they can be completely independent, location independent, to escape the matrix, so to speak, and do something that's more meaningful, more in line with their purpose, with a passion, and with a heart.
And it's interesting. As much as COVID destroyed many things, COVID did awaken that whole understanding that we can be online and still connect, that we can be virtual and still do wonderful things. Whereas before that, it was more toxic. It was, TikTok being really nasty, and there were a whole lot of things that weren't always pleasant. now the world is filled with people online who are doing good things, and they know that they can do it from an online perspective. So you're right, and that it's even going to get greater. I mean, with the rise of AI and all the other technologies, it's even going to get bigger.
Yeah, COVID, yes, as awful as it may have been, it was a slap on the wrist that we needed as a race, as a human race, to really wake up, to really focus on what truly matters: your health, family, relationships, and freedom. It's not the money, it's not the bigger house, the bigger car, the next iPhone, the next purse, or whatever that may be. No, sure, those are nice. Those are the icing on the cake. But ultimately, it's about relationships, fulfillment, impact, and more people, and freedom. It's what people are focusing on.
I think the interesting word there is, well, they're all, but freedom. I think people felt they were free before and didn't realize they weren't, because once COVID came along and they were locked down, and for some countries for many, many weeks and months, then they started to realize that actually they don't have much freedom. This all happened so quickly. And so, and of course, you're right, relationships, not being able to see fathers, mothers, children, making sure they're okay, not being able to get to them, all of those terrible things that happen makes you realize that you really have to spend each moment very preciously, because it goes quickly, and you can lose very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, don't take
It's
anything
interesting.
for granted. I saw a quote yesterday,
No.
absolutely beautiful. And that quote was, "Today I opened two beautiful gifts, my eyes."
That's a nice quote. Yeah.
Because every day is a gift. That's why it's called the present, literally and figuratively speaking.
Yeah, and and you need to walk around with a smile on, which you do, a smile on your face, and
Yeah,
warmly greet people, and they will
absolutely.
respond in kind. If you walk around with a grumpy look, or if you walk around cautious, people don't respond in kind. Now, there are always going to be bad people, and there are always going to be different people, but most people are actually genuinely quite good. They're
Yeah.
not looking to be
No,
difficult or have a bad life. They're looking to have a good life.
that's the same
We
thing
just
that
have to open up.
I noticed, that the same thing after living and doing business around the world for the past 20 years. People are people. Doesn't matter what they are: white, black, blue, green, doesn't matter the nationality. They all want the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we hear all these different things, but I've known a lot of different cultures, and I've worked with quite a lot of them as well when I was at a uni,
Mhm.
and they all are the same. They all want to have a good life, raise their children, enjoy their life, and enjoy all of those things. Some of them, of course, find it difficult to do that in different countries, but yeah, it's true. It's just what we need. It's just what we want.
Absolutely. Beautiful. What would you say is your number one personal superpower?
Oh, being sort of gorgeous, I suppose. Let me.
Other than that, that's
Um,
evident.
I think the superpower is actually growing. I think it's now I know. So if you asked me this 12 months ago, I'd say I don't think I have a superpower. I'm
Mm,
just, whatever. Now, I think my superpower is that I have a message to carry to people. And although lots of people do talk about this, which is wonderful, I'm going to carry that message to try and help where I can. So my superpower is that I know this is what I'm meant to do, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I really want to do. And so it now is just a matter of putting it all into place and helping.
beautiful.
So that is it. The awareness, the awakening of me is probably the superpower.
Love that. What is one thing that you used to value that you don't value anymore?
Money.
Ah, why?
Because I've realized that that's not what gave me pleasure. I used to spend a lot of time trying to make sure I had enough, um, and that I had everything that I wanted, or could buy what I wanted. I mean, I'm not talking about buying Ferraris and $2 million houses, but just everyday average things. In the last couple of years, as I've grown more as a person, I've realized that that has no bearing on me really. There's always going to be money floating around if I want it. What's important is how I feel and what's happening. And the other thing, of course, is health.
Oh, yes.
That's really the most important thing. But yeah, money is the one thing that I've changed.
Yeah.
That my approach to it, my thinking about it. I want to make money. Don't get me wrong. I want to
Sure.
have money, but it's no longer the driving motivation to do something, which means that it's a better motivation now because it's done
Mhm.
without wanting it just to be paid for.
I can relate to that because before that, before my awakening was all about money, money, money. But then I made a switch since my awakening. Now it's all about impact, about inspiring, helping. Because when you build your entire approach, your business, your life around helping someone, serving someone, making them win, money manifests in magical way. You don't even have to chase it. You don't have to look for it. You don't have to sell, to hustle, so to speak. It comes to you
That's
by
right.
just having
Once you do,
conversations.
yeah, it's like when you're on the right path, things happen the way they should. When you're
Yeah.
off the path, then you've got to struggle to find them. And I know people might say, "Oh, that's all a bit, airy fairy," but the truth is that's the way it works.
Yeah,
When you're in the right
absolutely.
when you're in the right zone, you're right. You don't have to go hunting for dollars. The dollars will come to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right that the greatest wealth we have is health,
Yeah,
health and
yeah.
time.
I mean, you
Yeah.
only have to look at somebody who has a chronic illness to know that
Hmm.
how good it is if you're healthy because um, you know people suffer from something like that many things, but say migraines, for example.
Yeah.
A migraine can completely ruin the life of somebody, not just the day but everything they do, because they have to be so careful. And I've gone out with a lady who suffered from migraines and I've seen her in absolute agony and pain, and I would never want to see that again and
Yeah.
or have experienced that. So you're right, health and well-being is so important.
Even something is that you can even imagine that your finger, for example, can make you cry. This finger right here, always had issues with it. When I was way back in 2005, I went to Brazil. I went to a national park. I'm a touchy kind of guy. I started touching plants. Unbeknownst to me, I touched a carnivore plant. So at first I didn't realize anything. And then later at night, it started to swell and becoming bigger and bigger. And that night I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I swear to you, I was crying because of that little thing right here. So again,
Right.
even the area that you can't even imagine is going to make you cry as a grown man, but you have to take care of yourself because your body is your palace, so to speak. It's the only place, it's your only home that you will never leave in this lifetime.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say it's such a small thing and yet it can
Yeah,
create so much pain and drama for you, isn't it?
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
frightening. It's frightening. I mean, in one
Absolutely.
way we're very strong, in another way we're very fragile.
That is a bit massive dose of, humbleness, because you can see that, hey, you might feel invincible, but the next moment, this little thing is making you cry as a grown man or grown woman, for example.
Mm.
Now, what is one thing that you didn't value that now you're valuing more and more?
Connection with people.
Mm,
So I spent a lot of time hiding away from people, just doing my work, going home, not going out, not mixing. And when I did, I always felt alone. And so I didn't put myself into conversations, didn't make myself known to people. And I've had a few very close friends through my life, but not many. But now I'm starting to meet and talk to people from all walks of life due to community connections online. And that's really opened my eyes to just how many good people and how many interesting people there are, and the things they have to say and the things they're doing
hmm.
just blow me away. I'm just learning. I'm like a babe in the woods crawling at the moment, but I'll get up and walk soon, and then I'll start running. But yes, it would be connection and trying to make connections with people.
Love that. Absolutely. What would you say are your three non-negotiable core values?
Truth. I was going to say honesty as well, but I suppose the truth and honesty are the same. Ethics.
Mm.
I like people to be ethical. And warmth. I like to be warm and open, friendly with people. Now, sometimes that's hard work for me because I'm not used to doing it. So I need to make the effort sometimes with that last one. But I won't, I have a very, very clear picture in my mind of the fact that my ethics are vital to me, to be honest and genuine and not, you know, if I've made a mistake or I do something wrong, that's fine. I accept that and be honest about it and just be ethical about everything I do. And that's something, you know, I'm hopeful that I've been passed on to my kids as well, although they do seem to be that way. Yeah, but that would be them, I think.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's move on. You like traveling, do you?
Sorry?
You like traveling, do you?
Yes, I love different cultures. I've lived in a couple of different places and I just like different foods too.
Yeah, we can do an entire episode on traveling, but I'd like to take you down a different type of traveling, down memory line. Go back to when you're growing up. You know, when we're kids, people around us, family, relatives, neighbors, teachers ask us, "Hey, Graham, what do you want to become when you grow up?" What was your answer to that as a young boy?
So I have to be honest with you, because I left school at 13,
Okay.
most of my life at school was pretty ordinary, and I never faced a question like that. But
Mm,
what I did do, because when I was growing up, I felt unsafe in my family home, I always spent time outside of the home. And I would play in the forests and I would play in the fields on my own. And I always wanted to be a hero. So, you know, if I was playing, cowboys and Indians or whatever I might be doing, I was always the hero. Um,
okay.
so I guess if I was being honest, I suppose I always wanted to be the person that protected others, something like that. But that was in a childlike mind.
Okay, cool. You mentioned school. What was your relationship with school? Did you love school or did you hate school?
Well, I did. I went to 8 different schools in 5 years in
Wow.
different countries. So we left England when I started school, left England, went to Africa, 2 different schools in Africa, went back to England. I got kicked out of a grammar school because I was too dumb, and sent to a comprehensive school, which was girls and boys, so I didn't mind that. I actually quite enjoyed that school. They tried to teach me to play the recorder, though. I was hopeless at playing the recorder. And then we came to Australia, and there were a couple more schools there, and ended up in Darwin in Australia, which is right at the top end of Australia. Very hot, very dry, and except for the wet season. And so my schooling went up and down a bit like a yo-yo. So if, for example, in Africa, in a town called Windhoek, which then was in Southwest Africa, now Namibia, the standard of education was reasonably low. So when I went back to England, the standard of education was really high. So I couldn't do the education in England at the same age level. So I was put in different classes. I was put in the bad boys class because they thought I was too dumb to learn. But it was just simply, we went to all these different schools and I never really settled.
Mm.
So my schooling has been a mix of trying to survive the bullies and trying to find a way to study. I was hopeless. The simple answer is I was hopeless at school.
What
I
was it?
really was.
Why was it? Because it was too boring for you, or it was too slow, or because you were sincerely not interested?
Probably a combination of all of those, but also the fact that I found myself in a school towards the end where at one stage they put me into a class much too high for me. So at 13, or at 12 actually, I was in the second last year of school in Darwin High because they saw some of my grades from England. But I had struggled with that in England, and so I just couldn't do the work. So that's why I left school, went off and got a job.
You mentioned you've been to Africa. Which countries did you live in?
South Africa and Southwest Africa, or Namibia now.
Oh wow. How was it living there back then?
So it was during the apartheid period, but I didn't know much because I was a kid. I didn't know
Sure.
much about apartheid. But now when I look back, I realized that there were no African students in sports in my classrooms or even on the school ground. I didn't see anyone. Um, the country is amazing, absolutely amazing, beautiful. It's very much like Australia, big, open, wide country. And Cape Town, when we lived in Cape Town, was I don't know what it's like today, but it was absolutely beautiful. Beautiful old colonial buildings, bright white colonial buildings, big streets. But you know, we were white kids, and so we had anything we wanted, and could go anywhere we wanted. I remember very distinctly my father, because he was British. My parents loved the Sunday drives, and the British loved going on their Sunday drives and putting the kids in. And I remember we went for a drive, and we lived near a place called East Point, which had this most stunning beach. And he took us for a drive, and we drove past this beach that was filled with old tires, barbed wire, bits of tin, and it was the Africans' beach. And that's how it was, that they didn't have any of the things that the white people had. And it occurred to me that it was quite odd. But I, you know, as a kid, I never explored it any further.
Mm.
Fintook was wonderful because it was sunny, and no television there, so it was sunny all day, and you played outside and had fun. You know,
Wow.
it was a bit of a kid's paradise in many ways for a white kid. Wouldn't have
Mhm.
been for a black kid though.
Sure. Wow. What was your favorite subject in school?
Going home.
Recess, sports, lunch?
Um, yeah, I liked sports. It was actually really funny when I was in England, they put me into a rugby league team. No, when I went to Africa, they put me in a soccer team. And when I went to Australia, I played what's known as Australian football rules, which is AFL. Um, so the reality is I liked soccer out of all of those games, but and in Africa, although I was in the B grade, I was captain of the B grade team for the
Wow.
school. Oh no, I wasn't very good. The B grade team, I think we won one game once in one season. Um, but it was great. And you know, like I said before, I didn't make connections, but as a kid, I had friends. I had friends and we enjoyed playing together. I didn't like PE in the gym though, you know, climbing ropes and jumping over bars and things like that. I was never good at doing any of that. If if anything, there was no subject that really grabbed me and made me feel good about it. I can't remember any one subject that I felt, oh, I can do this. I want to do this.
Was there any subject you could not stand?
Yeah, French and maths.
Okay.
Still am hopeless with maths.
Mm.
Fortunately, I use calculators a lot.
Yeah. You mentioned sports in Africa. So when you were, as you said, the captain of the team and football and soccer, were you competing against black kids or white kids or a mix?
No, only white.
Oh wow. Okay.
Never saw a black boy on the field. Never saw them at the carnivals. So
Mm.
I used to really love running. I suppose if anything at school, I used to love track events.
Mm.
The 100 and well, not so much the 200. I'm lazy. 100 was enough for me. And relays. I was a really good bend runner. That's what my coach said to me. So I'd always be the second runner to run the bend. And I really love relays. And when I was in Australia, when we arrived, there was a coach who started coaching me to hurdle, run the 100 meter or 110 meter hurdles. And I was actually quite good at that. And I really enjoyed being in that school. And that was the only school that I actually started to feel quite like I was actually becoming a student. And I remember that, I was actually enjoying going to school, but we only stayed 6 months before my father moved us again. But yes, so those sorts of sports I really liked. Those are the good memories. I won a prize once for artist
Wow.
for drawing a picture.
What did
Third
you
prize.
draw? What did you
It
draw?
was a picture of the Beatles.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I got third. Gosh, I don't know why. I remember looking at it thinking they looked all strange.
Do you still have that
Maybe
picture?
they felt sorry. Hey, no, because the school hung it up, and again, I've never thought about grabbing it. It's a shame. I really should have. Yeah,
Maybe
should
you
have
can
kept
reach
it.
out to the school and get it back.
A long time ago. A long
Yeah.
time ago. I actually went to a concert in Sydney with Paul McCartney after he'd left the Beatles when he was
Ah,
with Wings. And I went with a photographer friend of mine who we were 3 rows from the stage, right in the middle. And he was taking all these great photos, and he gave me some blown up photos of him. And when I was with a girl, and when we separated, it was quite a bad separation. She kept these beautiful pictures, black
ah,
and white shots of Paul McCartney, because he sat on a stool at one stage, came out after Wings had done a lot of their music, and then he came out, put down a stool, single spotlight, and he sang Yesterday and Blackbird, just
mm.
himself and an acoustic guitar. It was just mesmerizing. And you're sitting there, I remember sitting there thinking to myself, that's a Beatle up there. It still wasn't Paul McCartney and Wings, it was still the Beatles. Today even, it's still, he was a
Yeah.
Beatle. It's just such an amazing impact they had on the world, and seeing one of them on stage on his own was just incredible.
Have you ever been told that you look like Paul McCartney? Kind of.
No. Years ago, I was told I looked like Brian Ferry, but never Paul McCartney. No.
Okay. Okay. You mentioned
I
that.
would.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say I'd probably like some of his talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Or a percentage of his bank account. That would help too. Anyways, you mentioned that when you moved to Australia, you at one school you felt really well. You felt like you were a student. What was the difference between that school and the previous schools that you were not really at ease?
I think part of it was the teachers.
Mm,
As I said, I started doing this hurdling, and that really I really enjoyed that. And I'd go to the school at around 6 a.m. 3 times a week, and he'd be there coaching us. And there were older boys there, and he would even start me off a back marker, and I could still catch the older boys. Um, he really took an interest in me in terms of really trying to coach me to do, and which is the first time. And I have to be honest, you have to go back to my childhood to understand this a little bit. But it was the first time an adult male had really shown any interest in me other than being abusive. So, so therefore, I felt really like I wanted to prove it to him, do everything he wanted, and so on. And he was he was lovely. He was really helping me. And so within the school itself too was very good. It was a well-known school in
mm,
terms of, and I just settled into it. And I just remember feeling really comfortable there,
mhm.
and working hard to do the study. And if we'd stayed there, I think I would have been very successful in school. But we moved, and that's what happened.
Why were you moving along all the time?
Uh, so my father was an architect, and I'm not
Okay.
sure. I think he liked the hot weather because he went to Africa. I think he was looking for something. Um, I mean, he became very successful. When we settled in Darwin, he ended up um, becoming the head of the building board up there, and he helped redesign Darwin after the big cyclone that devastated Darwin in 1974. He was one of the men who helped rebuild Darwin and put in cyclone protection buildings, like build them to protect them from cyclones. So he's a very clever man, but I think and he's given me a bit of his wanderlust too. I mean, I think he was always looking for something else.
Mm.
He never was quite settled. Even when he retired, um, he left and they went back to Perth and he did other things. He was always looking for something.
Beautiful. Imagine that we're in the same class, say, so you said you left class at school at age 13, right?
Yeah.
So imagine at age 13 we're in the same class. What kind of student were you? Were you the shy one, the nerd one, the life of the party, the joker, the chatterbox, the superstar?
I was a bit of a chatterbox, and I'd get in trouble for that. But generally, you'd have to say I was a quiet student. I wasn't a joker I mean, I have a sense of humor, but I wasn't a joker at school. So I would have to say that I was a quiet one, and mainly because I was fearful about what the next lesson was going to be,
Mm.
because I wasn't coping with it.
Were you popular with the girls?
No, I struggled to meet girls again.
Really?
Although I remember in Darwin, I did a terrible thing. So I had about 3 or 4 really close friends. Like they were good friends, and they were a bit like me. They were quiet kids and a bit nerdy. And one of them, he met this really lovely girl, and I remember she was, kids. We would have been 12, 13. I think I was still at school then, or I might have just left. And anyway, she was lovely. And then I remember we would go out as a group. And I remember she said to me one day, why don't you come round? I want to show you something, or whatever. It was a drawing or a picture she'd done. But anyway, so we were there and we ended up starting to kiss. And it was his girlfriend. And here I am. Yeah, I know. I know. I'm not saying I was good. I'm just telling you the story.
Just one moment.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so Colin and Colin's brother, this is the boy who was dating the girl. His brother would also hang around with us, who was much older, so he was able to drive a car. So suddenly Colin and his brother turn up at the house as well. So she rushes me into a downstairs, like we were sitting underneath. In Darwin, the houses then were all on stilts for the hot weather, so that you could sit underneath, very much like Asian homes. And so we were sitting downstairs, and there was a laundry downstairs. So she pushed me into the laundry, and I'm standing there up against the wall in the laundry. There's no door on the laundry. And Colin's there with her, and I can hear them talking, and like girlfriend or boyfriend. And his brother walks down past the laundry and sees me and just stops, looks at me, and then turns around and goes back, and they leave. And I knew I never saw the girl again, and we never did anything else again, but I knew how bad that must have felt for him. He didn't say anything to Colin, but you just know how bad he must have felt about him. Wow. So that's about my only experience. I had very little experience with girls other than that, although I did play spin the bottle when I was about 5 or 6 with a girl.
Tell us about that. What's that about? Tell me.
Have you ever heard spin the bottle?
No.
Okay, so you have an empty bottle. Usually you sit in a group of people, like 5, 6, 7, but there were only 3 of us. There was another boy and there was myself. And she invited us both to her house. She said it. And we're only kids, like we're really only 5 or 6. And so you spin the bottle, and whoever the bottle's pointing at, you're supposed to kiss them give them a kiss. And so it ended up that it was pointing at me when she spun it. So she would always spin because there were 2 boys. So the 2 boys weren't going to kiss. So she would spin it, and either boy. And so it ended up with me. And then, so she acted all shy, and I was all shy. And so we went under in England, you have stairs inside, and you have usually a little cupboard underneath.
Yeah. So
we went into this little cupboard and had this little kiss. And I can still remember it to this day. Her name was Alison too. I remember her.
Shout out to Alison, if you're still watching this today. Was that a kiss on the cheek or kiss on the lips?
We tried. So it actually wasn't a kiss, really. It was touching your lips. We leant forward in this little cupboard, and as soon as we touched lips, we pulled back.
Jolt of
I pulled back. Yeah,
Wow, that's
that's right.
cute. That's cute.
And then we left to cover. But and that may make you think that I had lots of girls, but no, that was
Mm.
about it.
All right. So, and do you remember what was your very first job and how much you get paid the first time you worked in your life?
Yep, I was still at school. Again with this friend Colin, he and I were peeling potatoes for a Greek fish and chip shop in Darwin, and we'd go after school. He'd put us out the back, and we'd sit on two stools, and he had a big bucket of water and a big bucket of potatoes, and he'd give us a knife each, and we peeled them with a knife, so they're all chunky. And then we'd throw them in the bucket of water or dip them in as we did them. And we got paid in Coke and Fanta bottles of Coke and Fanta. That's what he paid us.
So no money.
No money. And then we'd cash the bottle, because in those days you could get reasonable amount for the bottles. So we'd
Yes.
cash them in. And that was the only money. And then I moved on to a little takeaway place that I worked for a while, and they paid a little bit of money,
Mhm.
and a few drinks as well. Those were the first jobs.
Awesome. Earlier you mentioned that you never felt safe at home. What was that?
So my father was very unpredictable in the way that he treated me. I mean, he could go from being very quiet and unassuming to suddenly very angry, and you'd get hit, and I was hit on several occasions, and so and it just and this is what I was saying about childhood trauma. It makes you build your own reality. So because you're not safe around your parent isn't looking after you the way they should. Now you don't know that, so you build your own sort of reality, which is what you live in, and you stop growing emotionally and stop growing in many respects, and get the right way of developing. So I never developed proper relationship understanding, because my father never said he loved me, or never ever touched me, put his arm around me. Now it was only ever physical abuse, but he never showed any emotion. And my mother was a bit like that. She never really showed that much emotion to us either. So it was quite a cold relationship between them and for us. And so that means that as a kid, you've got no relationship skills, you've got no love in your life, and you find it then hard to have them and to have relationships. But I found I was always much more comfortable outside of the house, on my own. And, I'm a kid, 5 years old, running around in forests now. Today, people would say that's dangerous, but I never ever got harassed or saw anybody in England. I was always fine. I did it in Africa too, which was a bit more dangerous, because I got chased by baboons once and other things. So, it's one of those things. I put myself in, I guess, dangerous situations without even thinking about it. Didn't care or didn't think about it. But I did find that that's what I needed. I was always on edge at home. So your stress level, it's a bit like, I'm not trying to say it's the same, but like veterans who come home from a war,
Mm.
they're always under stress the whole time they're in that war. So that's why they get post-traumatic stress, because they have never been able to release the stress. And so it stays inside them. They just keep piling it on. Bit like that, not at that level, but a bit like that. At home, I was always a bit on edge,
Mm.
waiting for the next thing to happen.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, yeah. Older brother, and two sisters.
So were your parents always also the same cold towards
No, no.
towards you?
So no, it's interesting. Parents are always different with different children. They're never the same. So my brother faced more emotional trauma. He was traumatized as well, but from an emotional level. He was never physically hit. Maybe I was a bit wild or a bit different. So I was, and my two sisters weren't at all. No, the two girls were. But my first beating took place at 5. You
Really?
know,
Wow.
so it was, yeah, very early on. But that's what happened. But that allows me, so the argument is, if none of this had happened to me, I wouldn't be able to now go and talk to other men about these things. So
Yeah.
that ultimately, that's because I've lived the experience. I can explain what happened to me, and it's like an alcoholic talking to try and help other alcoholics or a drug
Yeah.
user or whatever it may be. If you haven't lived it, people don't give you credibility, because
Exactly.
they can't, how do you know? But if somebody says to me, well, what would you know, like what it's like to be beaten as a kid? Well, I do.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to go through all those emotional things.
Absolutely. One of the things that I realized since my awakening is that life is a school. Literally, we come here to learn, grow, overcome all the challenges, craps that we go through, and then we take those gifts and share them. So now you're looking back at your childhood, your difficult childhood, with the eyes of maturity, wisdom, and all that. Would you say that what you went through and when you went, you know, through your end of your parents, that was literally the class, your class, the lessons you had to learn, and now you're taking those gifts and sharing them with other men, how to overcome that.
It is a good way of putting it. I mean, if somebody asked me, could I change it? I would say, absolutely, I would like to change it. I would like to
Sure.
grow up in a loving family, have normal relationships, have gone on to school and gone straight to university and had a career from a very young age. But that wasn't my life. And so I have to accept that wasn't the way it panned out.
Mm,
But my university was learning how to survive in that environment. And now, and then, I ended up broke and alone in Sydney, and there's a whole bunch of things that happened to me there. So it was about learning how to survive. And then now, learning that I have those problems from childhood that affected my adulthood, having those worked on and providing now that help to others. So yes, it was my way of now helping other people. It wouldn't be happening if those things didn't happen to me.
absolutely. Are your parents still around?
No, no, they're both dead.
Did you guys make men's meet toward the end of their lives?
Um, I, I was sad when my mother passed away, but I have to be honest, not when my father did.
So
I didn't.
when you were growing up and as a grown man, did your father or your mother apologize or try to redeem themselves by being kinder to you?
No, they had a very angry relationship with each other. They didn't see that it was wrong. I'll give you an example. My brother, who lived in the same city as them, I didn't. I lived elsewhere. He had 2 children, and they were both probably about 7 and 9, a girl and a boy. And he left them with my parents for a weekend. When the 2 children came back to my brother's place, they both said to him, "Don't ever leave us there again, Dad. It's horrible. They just scream and fight, and it's just horrible." Now, they never touched the grandchildren, but that was the environment that they built up, and they hadn't changed. And this is many, many years later, when they should have been finding some way of, and this is with their grandchildren there, and they still hadn't changed. They never were going to. So
Why do you think some people opt to live this kind of and this kind of relationship and environment? Why don't they just, of course, it sounds much easier to say it, but while you're going through, why do you think people would put up and endure this kind of difficult situation?
it's also a generational thing. They came from a generation that didn't divorce. I found out much later in life. One of my sisters did some genealogy and studied and found out that my father was given away as a child by his father
Mhm.
to a very strict family who showed him no love. So that understanding came through. Um, so he had a very tough start as well. And so did my mother. I found out both her parents were dead by she was the age of 21. They both died. her father through a hunting accident and her mother through something else. So they both had pretty tough childhoods. And so I think it's one of those situations where the wounded find each other, the damaged people, they found each other.
Yeah.
And I don't think they felt that they could be with anybody else. And they were just used to each other, and they may not have even seen the yelling and screaming as a problem, but it was the others around them who did. And they had other things too. I mean, it's just that, yeah, they didn't, I don't think they understood that it was such a problem.
Yeah. It makes sense. Wow. Listen, Graham, thank you for opening your heart and sharing your story, this painful part of your journey. Appreciate that. We're gonna do a part 2 next week to talk about your business and from that point on forward to now. But for now, let's call it a day. If someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
The best way probably at the moment is either LinkedIn or Facebook. I've put my website on hold whilst I rebuild it. And so the book that I've written, I'm thinking about reshaping the book, but at the moment it's called Pain, Loss and Desire. And so they can via that. But yes, Facebook, Graham Robinson, or LinkedIn, Graham Robinson. I'm on there as well. Don't do a lot on Instagram, but I'm going to be TikToking soon, doing some
Ooh,
dancing.
that's amazing. Keep me posted. I want to see that.
I will do.
Maybe you can do some rehearsals and practice for part 2. We can start the call with some of you showing us your moves.
Maybe we will both do a dance together.
Oh yeah. I'll dance like a polar bear who's drunk. Anyways, Paul, Graham, listen, my brother, I salute you. You truly do with a heart. Keep shining your light. Keep blessing the world, your presence, your impact, your gifts. Stay safe, stay awesome. God bless you. Have a fantabulous rest of the Friday for you and a beautiful weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Have a good one.
Thanks, Paul.
Very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.